Hello, my name is Paul James. I'm a male mental wellness advocate, and today I'm going to be discussing what anxiety fatigue is. Now, before I jump into this video, I'd like to just preface that I'm mostly going to be discussing my own personal experience with anxiety fatigue. I'm not a medical expert, I'm not a life coach, I'm just somebody who's had these experiences and who's done a good chunk of research into what these phenomena are. So now that I've got that out of the way, there's a few ways I believe you can go about experiencing anxiety fatigue. For me, the most common was after either an anxiety attack or a panic attack. And to put it simply, that's when you have an anxiety attack, you have a panic attack, you have a surge of energy from that attack. And once that attack ends and everything starts to calm down, you just feel exhausted afterwards. And rightfully so, you know. You just experienced, like I had mentioned, a surge of energy, going to all the wrong places, of course, just your alert system. And it exhausts you. It makes you feel completely tired. I mean, even earlier today, I had a minor anxiety attack. I had a job interview and I was a little nervous about it because it was a third round, you know, so a little bit of pressure there, but you know, that gave me a minor anxiety attack, and once I had finished that interview, I felt tired. I felt so tired I ended up taking a little nap. Now, the other way you might experience anxiety fatigue is if you have a generalized anxiety disorder that you experience throughout your day. That will just leave you feeling exhausted potentially all the time. I mean, let's say an average day for you, you get up, you go to work, and throughout that day, you're experiencing little anxiety attacks here and there. Maybe you have a meeting that makes you anxious, and going into that meeting makes you anxious, and then you have an assignment you have to do for work, and that makes you anxious. Or you have to drive home, you know, you got to commute home, and there's a part of your commute that makes you anxious. Maybe you got to go under a tunnel or something, and all these little things add up, and if you're experiencing this on the daily, it's completely natural for you to feel tired, fatigued throughout the day. Now, there's one more way in which anxiety can cause fatigue, and that's if you're not getting enough sleep. This is very common, and this is something I used to have a lot of experience with. When my anxiety was at one of its worst, I struggled with insomnia hard. Okay, now that we know what anxiety fatigue is, we're going to discuss how to overcome anxiety fatigue. The difficulty is there's no straight cure for the fatigue itself. Rather, you're going to want to address the anxiety in order to overcome the fatigue. We need to remember that this fatigue is merely a symptom of anxiety, and trying to address just the fatigue really isn't going to get us anywhere. At the end of the day, we want to address the anxiety, the underlying anxiety that's causing this symptom. So how do you go about that? I mean, there's tons of ways to go about treating anxiety. And, you know, I don't believe there's a one-size-fits-all for everyone. I think everyone's path in life is going to be different. With that said, what I did to overcome my anxiety, it's probably not going to work for everyone. And I'm not sitting here and trying to claim that it's going to work for everyone. So any of the advice or the discussions I'm going to be having throughout the rest of this video, take it with the thought that it might not work for you and you might need to adjust maybe my methods to better fit your own circumstances. Now, as mentioned, you really want to address the anxiety, and in order to address the anxiety, you need to know the underlying cause of your anxiety. When I was struggling with insomnia, which, like I mentioned, is one element of fatigue, I knew exactly where my anxiety was coming from. I had Lyme disease at the time. I was very anxious about how that disease was going to progress. That's what was keeping me up at night. That was where my racing thoughts were. And I did a number of things to calm those thoughts down, but simultaneously allow me to get a better night's sleep. So to fall asleep, I wouldn't look at my phone screen at the end of the day. I give it like maybe an hour before bed. I wouldn't look at my phone screen. If I did find myself staying up at night, what I would do is I would avoid looking at the time as well, because this is one of the biggest things that I found to be detrimental to getting to sleep. I'd be looking at the clock thinking, oh my God, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm still not asleep. Maybe I'll get 4 hours, you know. Now, and even still, I struggle to get to sleep sometimes. Now when I struggle to get to sleep, I completely avoid looking at the clock. I just, accept the fact that I'm not sleeping. I'm struggling to go to sleep. And I tell myself, I will get to sleep whenever I get to sleep. I really don't have control over it at this moment. The last thing I did too was I would force myself to think that I was going to sleep. And this sounds a little weird, so let me explain. The biggest thing with anxiety when you're trying to get to sleep at night is you're having all these racing thoughts, and they can be about the most random things. It can be about something you said earlier in the day that you're a little embarrassed about, or something you did 10 years ago that you feel uncomfortable about, or something in the future that's making you anxious. It can be about a million different things. And what I found was when my head is racing at night specifically, it's usually all over the place. There is no rhyme or reason for what I'm thinking. It's just completely scattered thoughts. And so with that in mind, I began to recognize when these thoughts would occur. Once I became aware that what I was experiencing in a particular moment, when I'm trying to get to sleep, is just scattered brain, what I would do is I would tell myself to stop. I would literally say, stop thinking in my head. And I would repeat that over and over and over again. And I'll take some deep breaths maybe while I do that as well. And to add to that, I may also tell myself, you're going to go to sleep. You're going to go to sleep. Stop. You're going to go to sleep. Now, it sounds quite silly saying it out loud, but the thing is, it really helps to stop the scattered thoughts. It helps to just take them and anchor them and kind of put my mind in a direction of like, okay, this is where we're going. We're going to sleep. Now, this wasn't always effective. I'm not trying to sit here and say this was always effective. Sometimes I would tell myself, stop, you're going to sleep, and then next thing I know, I'm slipping back into the scattered thoughts. Sometimes it would take some repetition in my head to really drill it in there, and that's okay. And it's gotten to a point now where my insomnia is much lowered, and I'm getting much better sleep now than I was a few years ago. On top of that, I would add ashwagandha to the mix. Ashwagandha is an all-natural herb. It directly attacks cortisol, which is the stress hormone in your brain. Highly recommend. I find it much more effective than melatonin or any other sleep aids. And so I would do that. I would take that to kind of help calm myself down on a physiological level, and then I would do the repetition in my head, telling myself to stop. You're going to go to sleep. Stop. You're going to sleep. But what if you struggle with fatigue due to anxiety attacks, panic attacks, or just generalized anxiety throughout the day? Like I mentioned before, you need to address the underlying anxiety. And this is where my method is a little less conventional. I never went to a doctor or a medical expert to treat my anxiety. Part of the reason for that is I never wanted to take benzos for anxiety or any other medication they would have offered me. And my mindset there was I've seen other people who've taken benzos, such as Xanax, and what I found was it seemed almost just like a Band-Aid for the problem. It seemed to temporarily relieve the problem, but eventually the problem would come back, usually stronger too. And it wasn't really the type of antidote I was looking for. I was looking for something much more permanent, much more long-term in its solution. And so I explored a number of options. I did do therapy for a while. That was very helpful in just kind of organizing my thoughts. But at the end of the day, what I found to be most effective was just accepting the fact that I have anxiety. It's still something I struggle with. I still get anxiety attacks, like I mentioned earlier. And it kind of just got to a point where I was like, I'm tired of just being so scared all the time and hoping this will go away. It kind of got to a point where I was just like, okay, this is just something I live with. This is just a part of who I am, and I just got to accept that. That's the big thing there, accept that. It was very difficult for me to accept the fact that I struggled with anxiety. I felt it was abnormal. I felt it was weird. I felt other people were judging me for it. And that made it only more difficult. It made it harder to go about my day-to-day life, and it made my anxiety worse, thinking those things. I reached a point where I genuinely think I just got so exhausted from being afraid all the time that I just told myself, this is just a part of who you are, and you just got to own it. and it's made things way easier. It's made things a lot easier, and my anxiety, since those thoughts began to develop, that was some odd years ago now, has definitely died down a lot. Like I said, I still get it. I still have my moments where I'm very anxious, but when I'm in those situations where I'm just like very anxious, very uncomfortable, I just say screw it. You just gotta deal with it. This isn't gonna last forever. It's gonna happen in the blink of an eye, and it'll be over, and then you can go about your life. So that is genuinely how I handle anxiety. Sometimes, for example, I'll get a little dizzy from anxiety, and in those moments, I'm like, all right, I'm dizzy. I just kind of accept it. I accept that it's here, and that it's a part of my life, and that its presence is kind of always with me. Now, when I first started doing that, it wasn't easy because my anxiety was much worse than it is now. Now it's gotten to a point where it's a lot easier to handle. But when I first started this whole, I'm just going to accept the fact that I have it, oh man, it would be all over the place. I'd have panic attacks sometimes over the most nuanced things. And so, like I said, I'm not saying my method is going to work for everyone. I know some people have anxiety much worse than I've ever experienced it. And I know my method isn't really conventional either. It's kind of just like, fuck it, we're just going to raw dog life and see what happens. But that's what worked for me. And I do genuinely believe that certain treatment options like prescription medication isn't the most effective. I think it can do more harm than good to people with anxiety. And I genuinely believe that people should be seeking out holistic, all-natural means of relieving this condition. So, that's how I went about it. Like I said, I don't think that's going to work for everyone. I know that's not going to work for everyone. We're all different in terms of our circumstances and our personality. Therefore, it might take some time for you to figure out what's right for you, what works for you. But other than that, that's my experience with anxiety fatigue. That's how I overcame it. I should note too, since I kind of started accepting anxiety in my life, and it's relieved itself a lot. My anxiety fatigue has gone away a lot too. I still get it from time to time. I still have my moments, and it still makes me tired, but I'm not exhausted all the time. I'm not just feeling drained and brain fogged daily. I feel much more level-headed and capable of doing what I have to do in this world. So that's my take on it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd appreciate if you left a like on it. And I would also appreciate if you subscribe to this YouTube channel. We talk about men's mental wellness and how to overcome that through all natural methods. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it, and I'm wishing you guys all the best of luck on your healing journeys.